Hello, I'm John Molesky, and this is Wilson Center Now, a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. My guest today is Haleh Esfandiari. Haleh is a distinguished fellow and director emerita with the Wilson Center's Middle East program. Among Haleh's many works and awards is her memoir, My Prison, My Home, One Woman's Story of Captivity in Iran. The book is based on her arrest by Iranian security authorities in 2007, after which she spent 105 days in solitary confinement in Tehran's Evin prison. She joins us today to talk about the current wave of protests in Iran. Haleh, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here and to see you.
You as well. So maybe, I think people know about the event that triggered this, but perhaps for those viewers who may not, can you tell us about the 22-year-old who was killed while in custody?
Her name is Mahsa Amini. She is a Kurdish Iranian and had come to Tehran with her family to visit other members of the family. And apparently, as she left the metro with her brother, and she was stopped outside the metro station by the morality police, who pointed out to her that she's not observing the proper hijab, i.e. meaning that she wasn't covering her hair, and that she has to go with them to the headquarters of the police, morality police. And she refused, like every other woman in Iran who is asked to go with them. But anyway, they took her by force in the van. And the next thing we heard was that she was taken to the hospital in a state of coma, and that she died 2 days later.
Yeah.
So apparently, from what one has put together, but the government has not announced it, is that she was beaten on the head, John, with a baton first, and then her head was banged against a wall. And so she went in a coma, and they took her to the hospital. The hospital, after she died, put a notice on their website saying that when they brought her, she was brain dead, and they tried to resuscitate her, but didn't succeed, and she died of a heart attack, but she was brain dead. So the first demonstration was by the family, the relatives outside the hospital. And when the news got to Kurdistan, and by then they were also taking the body to her native town in Kurdistan, yes, people came out into the street. And this was the beginning of what we have been witnessing now for 13
ongoing
years.
As we speak. So let me ask you, how common is this type of arrest by the so-called morality police?
A lot. I mean, ever since Mr. Raisi became president, 14, 15 months ago, one of his first decisions was that really to impose seriously the hijab on women, because 43 years after the revolution, a lot of, especially young women, were not interested in observing the proper hijab, but they carried a scarf around their neck, and whenever they saw these people coming, the morality police, they would put it
sort
on
of minimal
their head.
compliance.
Yeah, exactly. And but Mr. Raisi, the president, is a conservative hardliner, and he thought by unleashing the morality police on people in the streets of Tehran and probably other cities, women will be scared and cover their head. He misread the women's desire for just being free and to choose what they want to wear.
So the scale and the nature of the protests is the question why now arises, and is it tied to the awful outcome that she died, or is this something that has been building, and the fact that she died was the trigger point that gave people the reason to finally challenge?
It was the trigger point, John. The fact that she died and she was murdered, basically,
Yes.
Was the trigger point, because this was going on, and the idea of the morality, having the morality police arresting these women, was that they would take them to their offices and lecture them, And so what happened in the past, there were other incidents that women were picked up and also killed.
And just the scale of what we're talking about, protests in more than 40 cities, dozens of deaths reported so far. We don't know actual numbers. And at least 1,200 arrested, according to security officials. What does this tell us about the current regime and the mood of the public? Do we have essentially leadership in Iran that is out of touch with the populace?
Definitely. I think the whole leadership is out of touch with the public and with the young people who came this time on the street. In the past, for the last 43 years, we have had demonstrations in Iran, ongoing demonstrations, the workers, the teachers, government employees, for different reasons. And women always join them. But this time, it's different. It's women who are leading these demonstrations. And one more thing, John, the women and young men who are in the street are the children of the revolution. They don't know anything about before the revolution. They were born after the revolution. They were indoctrinated. They went to schools, to universities, and it shows the failure of the state, to raise these children according to what they want.
So far, the regime has apologized for the death, said it was or at least labeled it a tragedy, not an outright apology, labeled it a tragedy, but said that the unrest is unacceptable as well. Do they get it in the sense that, are these protests different? Will they need to do more than that? Will they need to somehow negotiate and figure out ways to address the protesters directly, or do they hope it just goes away?
I don't think they will hope that it will go away. Otherwise, they wouldn't have unleashed so many different security forces on the protesters.
So that you think that's a sign they take it very seriously?
Oh, they are scared. They are scared of these young people. They really are scared because they are worried that other government organization, even maybe some part of the army, will refuse to go along with it and will join the protesters, because we have had famous sports people, artists, universities, professors and students supporting the demonstrators, and and across the country it is. What I hear is that there is almost in 80 large cities and small towns are these ongoing demonstrations. So
and we've seen calls for nationwide strikes. So do you expect this momentum to continue to build?
Look, if there is a nationwide strike, then that would be a big warning to the regime. As long as it is just small, the universities, the students and so on, it's nothing. But the moment you have the public sector and private sector going on strike, that will be just terrible for them.
One BBC analyst, when asked about the potential that the government might negotiate, this is what he said. Or was that not a BBC? I should credit, it was a CNN analyst. He said, the government has far more capacity for repression than it does for reform at this stage. Do you agree with that assessment?
I agree with that, because they can't think of reform. They can't think of removing the mandatory hijab. They can't. I mean, it's for them unacceptable. It's a pillar of
because of their whole belief system.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But I don't know what I think might happen, maybe not, is that they would allow women to appear in public the way they want, without the hijab, with the hijab, and call back all these morality police and really leave women alone to what it was like before the revolution. Those who wanted to cover their hair would cover, those who didn't want to cover their hair did not cover.
Are there any moderates within the government who have significant voices who could, from the inside create a counter movement?
This government, the current government, no.
No.
Under Khatami and Rouhani, there were few moderate voices, that would step in. But under this government, no.
So I'm assuming you're still in touch with people back in Iran, and of course we wouldn't want to give names.
No, not at all.
To protect people, but what are you hearing from the individuals? Is there a sense that this is a potential time of significant change, or is it too early to tell in this flare-up?
I mean, I think it's too early to tell now, but I mean, people are full of, my friends even, are full of awe and admiration for the young women. So far 4 of them have died in the hand of these sharpshooter who appear on the streets. They just kill people. Yeah, and but it started with a protest against the hijab, and now it has developed into a much more grievances from people, because the corruption of the regime, the interference in people's private life, the economic hardship that people are facing, cost of living is very high, and just the interference in everybody's daily life with their announcements and so on.
How much power does the populace or civil society have within Iran? Can they move the needle, or if the regime just digs in its heels and says unacceptable and sends out the security forces, that's it?
Unfortunately, I have to say that's it, if they send out. But it's not the last time. We will see it happening again and again and again. And I think even in future, women will play a very important part in leading this revolution. It's a feminist social revolution.
Mm-hmm. Haleh, I've known you a number of years now, and I know a lot of things about you that maybe viewers don't know, but there's a very tough woman, but also a very humble woman. And I'm wondering now, with the years that have passed since your experience of being arrested and being imprisoned, and the support that was generated within this country during the campaign season to get you out, how you're processing this now? All these years later, how does your personal experience affect your analysis of the current circumstance? And how do you think of this on the larger continuum of Iran as a nation and a society, and where it maybe can get to versus where it is now? How do you process all of this?
Look, John, prison leaves its mark with you, no matter what. But when I came directly to the Wilson Center 2 days after I arrived from Iran, because I had decided I would like to leave it behind me, My generation was also active, did a lot. But this generation is unbelievable. They are bold, they are educated, and the most important thing is they are connected. Mm-hmm. What I hear,
they had tools you didn't have.
Yeah, what I hear from Tehran, and they hear from other Iranian cities, their friends, is that the government has managed to slow down the internet, cut their access to Instagram, WhatsApp, and that is what they are hurting, because they would like, every person who, let's say, put it this way, every person who is on the street would like to be a journalist, by sending the news.
Citizen journalists.
Yeah, citizen journalists, by sending the news, taking videos, and so on. And then what do they have? They have their phones to work on. And then if the internet is slow and they have this potential anymore to do this, it's very frustrating for them. But the United States announced a couple of days ago that they are lifting the sanctions against the internet, and facilitate.
And this is trying to get some movement on the nuclear deal.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are these connected in any way? Do the protests create sort of a foothold for the West in negotiating with Iran on the nuclear deal, or they'll compartmentalize these two things?
It's compartmentalized. What I think is helping is the condemnation of what is going on in Iran. Look, this is an indigenous movement. It started in Iran and it will end in Iran. But of course, if the Iranian women feel that abroad, overseas, they will get some sort of backing, of course it's very helpful to them. Just morally. Because on the ground, it's they who get killed, it's they who are arrested, they who are tortured.
Yeah, history makes it pretty clear that change comes from within ultimately.
Of course, definitely. And what is also shocking is that President Raisi, rather than saying, well, let's discuss your grievances and so on, blames immediately abroad, the Iranian diaspora in different countries and foreign countries, including the United States. I'm sure that everybody was taken by surprise when they saw the perseverance of these people.
No, that was part of your arrest, right? Suggesting that outsiders are trying to undermine us from afar and stoke revolution. So my final question for you, Haleh, and this is something I really, you're such a positive person who's been through the ringer. And in some of your answers, you don't have any starry-eyed, Pollyannish hopes for instant gratification. But how do you remain hopeful? And do you remain hopeful as it relates to the potential for your fellow Iranian, your former fellow citizens?
Look, I consider myself Iranian American.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, what happens on the ground in Iran, I care for. And especially I care for the younger generation because, as I told you earlier, I find them much more courageous than what we were, and we left in a hospitable environment. They don't live in a hospitable environment. But I wish they would succeed, but my sense is that the current regime government is going to fight really very hardly to keep their position
the rules
and
in
to
place.
keep and as I said, unless the whole country decides to support this movement, this will become also a movement, but it will a movement that will be on hold, but they will be back. Because you can't, when half of your population are under the age of 30, maybe more, and are educated, you can't keep them suppressed forever and ever, and especially impose on them how they should behave and live in the privacy of their homes or in the streets and so on.
Well, we keep hope alive, right? At some points, that's the best you can do. Well, thank you. As always,
you very much.
Really great to have your insights.
Thank you.
See you again.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of Wilson Center Now, and that you'll join us again next week. Until then, for all of us at the Center, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for being here.